Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at the pretty village of Upwey in Dorset. Now these days it's a suburb of Weymouth and it's about 4 miles north of Weymouth town centre in the Wey Valley. And we're going to be walking a roughly 6-mile circular route. We'll have a quick look at a few things in Upwey, and there are certainly some fascinating things to see there, before heading west along a section of the Jubilee Trail to Corton Hill. And we'll then head north and join up with the South Dorset Ridgeway for some amazing views. And then we'll head east, keeping our eyes peeled for some boundary stones. And then we'll drop back down to Upwey for a bit more exploring. Now I'm filming right at the end of May. Well, at the moment the sun is out. There's quite a bit of cloud up there. Fingers crossed we're going to be dry today, but should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Well, I've parked my car next to the church and we'll start off with a little wander through the village. Speaking of the church, that's just behind me here. And it's the Church of St Lawrence. Now, there was a church on the site at the time of the Norman conquest, and there was an early reference to it in 1201. But the present church originates to around about 1490, when the nave, north aisle, west tower and north porch were all built. The south arcade or aisle was added in 1838, and there was a major restoration in 1891. And a new chancel and vestry was built in 1907. The clock dates to the early 19th century and was restored in 1912. I think it's got 6 bells. And just looking outside, there's a gargoyle there of a man kneeling on a wolf's head, pulling its jaws apart. Now, just looking at the history of the village, going back many years ago, there was once a hamlet here called Elwell, recorded in 1212 as Helwill, which derives from hail or healthy well, which I think is Saxon origin. Anyway, the modern Upwey has sort of subsumed it, although there's still a street in the village called Elwell Street. Now, the name Upwey originates from, the source of the River Wey, which is around these parts. Basically, there's an underground spring, often referred to as a well, which we'll see shortly. Interestingly, the village name is actually spelt Upwey on a 1902 map. Well, sadly, the church is locked, so we can't go inside. Quite an unusual thing for a Dorset church, but there you go. Okay, well, let's continue with a little wander along the little street that goes south through the village. Well, pretty little cottage there called Teacher's Cottage. I expect there must be a school nearby. And indeed, just down from Teacher's Cottage is the old school, built in 1840 and closed in 1976. And then I think it then became the village hall. Now, just by the school is the Upwey wishing well. Hopefully you can see this because it's quite well shaded underneath the trees. It's not actually a well but a spring, and indeed the source of the River Wey. The River Wey is about 5 miles long. It flows south and out to sea at Weymouth, but as you can see here, the water is incredibly clear, and it is indeed a chalk stream. And it's got a constant temperature of about 10.5 degrees. I think they did grow watercress here just downstream in the past. And there's a stone seat next to the well that was built for King George III. And he drank water from a special gold cup, which I read became the original prize for the winner of the famous Ascot Gold Cup horse race at Royal Ascot. Certainly the race was established in 1807, so the timescales fit. The arches there were added in 1887 to commemorate the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. And it's been a visitor attraction for over many years. And the Tea Gardens building was rebuilt in 1951 and again in 1994. I'll tell you, what an idyllic place. I should say it's 5 minutes to 10. It opens at 10 o'clock, the tea rooms here, but the lady said I could have a quick look round while it's quiet. But the well is through there. Probably can't see it because it's nicely shaded. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. I'm going to refer to my old friend Sir Frederick Treves and his Highways and Byways in Dorset book that he wrote in 1906. I've got to wear my glasses for this. Upwey is one of the places of pilgrimage for the Weymouth holidaymakers. They come here in their hundreds, mostly in coaches and wagonettes. The reason for their coming to Upwey is a spring there with a fascinating title of the Wishing Well. It is to see the Wishing Well that the romantically minded pay their shillings for a seat in the crowded charabanc. The well, as I remember it some 40 years ago, was a spot of faint interest. Its powers were ill-defined, and there was no particular ground for assuming that a wish expressed at Upwey would have any special advantage. The place is pleasant enough, in spite of the crowd, the swings and the tea gardens. A spring issues from the foot of a wooded bank and, hurrying away under an avenue of trees, vanishes at the mill. A seat placed under two ridiculous stone arches has been erected for the benefit of the tripper. For the benefit of the villager, on the other hand, the following ritual has been introduced, which has proved to be more lucrative than a mere gazing at the waters. The wisher receives a glass of water. He drinks it, with appropriate giggling, empties the glass by throwing the water over his left shoulder and, most important of all, makes an offering of money to the keeper of the well. Folk of all kind go through this formula for the attaining of supposed ends, old men and maidens, young men and children. It is a curious spectacle for the 20th century, even if it serves no more than to illustrate the magic of a pleasing name. The well is commonplace enough, but the name is charming. I say, I love Treves' prose. I love the book as well. Well, just a little bit further south down from the Wishing Well is the mill house, and at one stage there were 5 mills along the River Wey, but the water mill here that was built in the 18th century and rebuilt in 1802, I think only stopped operating in 1991. You can see the actual mill building, I guess, behind the mill house there. Now, Overcombe Mill, portrayed in Thomas Hardy's 1805 novel The Trumpet Major, was part based on Upwey Mill. Well, what a delightful little place. We'll see a little bit more of Upwey towards the end of the video when we get to the end of the walk. But we're now going to start heading out into the countryside, initially westwards along the Jubilee Trail. Well, just a little pit stop early on in the walk, catch our breath, because we've been going uphill away from the village, which is in a valley. So we're on a section of the Jubilee Trail, but already just looking over to the north are some quite stunning views, and I think we may well be coming back along a section of that ridge on the homeward journey. Well, our first view today of the sea in the far distance, that's Weymouth Bay, and just see the edge of Weymouth there, and just beyond the Isle of Portland. Well, I mentioned that we're on a section of the Jubilee Trail. That's a 90-mile long-distance path that winds its way all the way from, well, Ford Abbey in Somerset to Bockley Dyke on the Hampshire-Dorset border. It was established in 1995, basically to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee of the Ramblers Association. But one thing's for sure, there's terrific views both to the south and to the north, all the way along this hill. So we're now heading to Friar Waddon Hill. Well, this is good fun. I think this is one of those public footpaths that it's not obvious on the ground where it is, but you just keep going in the right direction and you'll be okay, if you know what I mean. Okay, well, let me have a little pit stop just to show you the view to the north. So I'm pretty sure that at the top of that ridge we meet on the way back. But I've said this before and I'll say it again, very much your typical rolling Dorset countryside landscape. Beautiful. Well, we're making good progress along Friar Waddon Hill, and in the very, very far distance high up on that ridge I can just make out the Hardy Monument. Of course, we've done a video walk there in the past. Nothing to do with Thomas Hardy, the author and poet, of course, a different Hardy altogether. Well, folks, it's one of those perfect days for walking. There's a lovely breeze up here. Hopefully it's not affecting the audio too much, but just keeping me nice and cool. Right, well, our next destination is Corton Hill, which is just behind me. And there's a few interesting things to look at there as well. Just as we're getting to Corton Hill, this is a good spot just to look north, just to show you where we'll be eventually heading. We'll be heading north along the top of that ridge, but it's a good view of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 barrows and more at the top. And I'll tell you a little bit more about them when we eventually meet them. Well, this is Corton Hill, and we will be carrying along that road for a little bit, but I want to do a tiny little detour down this track here. There's something to explore. Now, this is what I was looking for. Just on the southern side of Corton Hill, this is Corton Farmhouse. Basically, there was a former manor farm here with origins back to the 16th century. Additions were made in the 17th century and alterations in the 20th century. But right next to it is this quite delightful little chapel, the Chapel of St Bartholemew. Now, well, the original chancel dates back to the 13th century, and the nave was rebuilt in the 16th century, and you can see it's got a bell coat, and it was a free chapel, but during the 19th century it was actually used as a barn by Corton Farm. There was a big restoration in 1897, after which it was reconsecrated as a chapel of ease to the Church of St Peter at Portisham, which is to the west of here. I don't think it's got any regular services, but it does have about 5 special services a year. Okay, well, let's have a little peep inside. Pleased to say that it's open. So, look onto the western side first. Looks like there's just the one bell, and then this is just through to the chancel end, and a little bit of stained glass in the window above the altar. I love the altar. It looks a quite special slab on top of the two supports there. And then just looking up into the ceiling, as you've got these sort of wooden beams which appear to have been painted green. Okay, well, this is as far west as we're going on the walk, and I'm leaving Corton Hill and now heading northwards up the side of Corton Down. Well, just before we get to the top of the ridge, this is a good spot just to look at these barrows that you can see all along the top. There are something like 400 barrows or burial mounds along the ridge, ranging from the Bronze Age and Neolithic. I mean, there's evidence of settlements going as far back as the Mesolithic, i.e. earlier than Neolithic. I mean, both periods are Stone Age. And of course, when you look at settlements like Upwey, you can see why they developed around here with a good water supply in the valley. Well, we've made it to the top of the ridge, and we now start heading eastwards, joining the South Dorset Ridgeway, which is that 17 miles long distance path that goes from West Bexington in the west to Osmington Mills in the east. And there's a few sheep around here, so I've got to put Logan back on a lead. Just as we're following this South Dorset Ridgeway, I say you actually get up quite close to all these barrows, and literally it's just one after the other all the way along the ridge. And then just looking round back to the west again, loads more of the barrows you can see on the horizon on the top of the ridge. And then, well, a really great view of the Hardy Monument from here as well, looking quite clear. Well, folks, this is a spot on the walk where you do get some fantastic views either side of the ridge. So this is looking over to the south, and there's Weymouth and the Isle of Portland. And then if I just slowly pan over to the northern side, and there is Dorchester, and in particular Poundbury down in the valley below. So presumably, yep, I think that must be the outskirts of the Maiden Castle, Iron Age hill fort, just beyond those trees. Oh, it's just starting to cloud over a bit, but I think we're going to be dry. Now, this little section of the walk here along a ridge is along Ridge Hill, and it actually inspired Thomas Hardy when he wrote The Dinas. Part 1 was published in 1904, and right at the beginning in Act 1, Scene 1 of The Dinas is called A Ridge in Wessex. And Hardy actually says, and I quote, "A highway crosses the ridge, which is near the sea, and the south coast is seen bounding the landscape below, the open channel extending beyond." Oh, look folks, a boundary stone. I think it's fairly modern though, because it doesn't appear on a 1902 map or even a 1958 map, but it does appear on a current Ordnance Survey map. But hey, it's a boundary stone and we've found it. Well, this is as far east as I'm going to go on the route, and now I'm going to start heading south along an old Roman road. Indeed, it was the road between Weymouth and Dorchester. The Romans used an inlet where the River Wey drains into the sea to access Radipole Lake, which they used as a port. Now the road also runs parallel with the busy A354. That's the Weymouth Relief Road. It replaced a hairpin bend and also bypasses Upwey. It finished in 2011, just in time for the Olympics in 2012. Now I was going to do a tiny little detour further east to have a look at the Bingham railway tunnel, but it would mean crossing the busy road, and you can only see the tunnel from the road. But I'll tell you a bit about it anyway. The railway from Dorchester to Weymouth was built in the 1850s, and I believe the tunnel itself is haunted by a ghost called the Shadowy Man. Now, Upwey Wishing-Well Halt was opened on the line in 1905, and it closed in 1957. So it's called the Wishing-Well Halt, even though it's nearly a mile walk to the Wishing Well itself. Nothing actually remains of what was once a basic platform. That was actually removed in 1988, and the only evidence of there being a halt there today are the steps that lead up to it by the bridge that goes over the road. Well, we've made our way down what was the old Roman road, and we're now into the outskirts of Upwey. So the first thing we need to look out for is the pub. Aha, excellent. It didn't take too long to find the Old Ship Inn, and it's got 17th century origins. It just shows as the Ship Inn on a 1902 map, and it features in Hardy's Under the Greenwood Tree. Well, as we're passing by, we ought to pop in, just for research purposes for the video. Well, here we are folks in the beer garden of the Ship Inn, just to quality test their ale, a pint of Buckham. Oh yes, 10 out of 10. Of course, as is traditional, crisp, and it's Logan's favourite, Pipers. There you go, fella. I should point out, crisps are bad for dogs, I know, and I don't give him many, and he'll get some treats later on, but 2 or 3 should be okay. Ooh, back to my pint. Well, I feel somewhat fortified by that pint. Just what I needed. Okay, we're very much on the homeward leg now. We're not going to go through Upwey itself. We're going to take a little footpath to the north, which sort of circumnavigates it. It's just to show you where we've been. This is a footpath that we've been coming along the side of a field. There were some cows in the field, but they totally ignored us. So we just need to head out of the field in that corner, and that should take us back to the church. Well, we're nearly back at the car. Seeing as we're going to be passing by the Wishing Well Tearooms, we ought to pay a visit, shouldn't we? Well folks, here we are at the Wishing Well Tearooms, just quality testing their cream, jam and scones and a cup of tea. Not quite the end scene yet, but we'll see you in a small moment. Oh, shall I give you some cream? Just check it, see if it's okay. Thumbs up from Logan. Oh, while I remember, a quick hello to Phil, who I've just met in the Tearooms. Phil is a regular viewer to the channel, and as is customary, he is now the proud owner of a limited edition Dave's Countryside Walks badge. Lovely to meet you, Phil. Well folks, we've come to the end of our walk. We thought we'd do the end scene here by that cute little Chapel of St Bartholemew on Corton Hill, with some quite stunning views over to the south. We hope you enjoyed the walk today. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks, where I always put up a map of our route. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. You fancy a little snooze in the sun now? Good boy.